and welcome to the 23rd episode of the Northeast Corner podcast. Today I will be joined by a very good friend of mine and former support worker of mine, Lee. He also trains out of SBG Moray, and he's here to help me talk to Kevin, King of the North, McAloon, who's a coach at Straight Blast Gym Moray, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu purple belt, and the owner at Moray Sports Massage. Enjoy. Ready?
Yeah.
Cool. Sweet.
So I've got kind of quite a bit here about Kev, so I'm just going to fire through some stuff.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you're a purple belt at SBG Moray under Martin Donaldson, the King of the North.
Yeah.
Title comes up a lot. Do you want to speak a little bit about that? None of us really kind of know the origin of that.
Okay. So first of all, my purple belt at SBG Moray. So SBG is a Straight Blast Gym affiliate, which is around the world. Martin Donaldson is one of my best mates, my best mate and coach as well there. And I was given my purple belt by Carl Tanswell, who's like a martial arts legend who sadly died now. The King of the North thing. So I enjoy competing, doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and one day I was set to compete against this guy, Craig McIntosh, and he gets nicknamed Spider Mop. So I think the guy who was writing the article was like, what do I call? So I obviously need a nickname for this guy, and a nickname, and it just stuck. I think it just stuck. People like seen the article and were like, King of the North, love it. You know what I mean? And it was kind of funny, is like the guy who wrote the article, he was like, people were like, oh, King of the North, love it. And the guy who wrote the article like responded in the comments like, yeah, it just came to me. And I was like, well, I think it came to the guy who wrote Game of Thrones, whatever his name is. I think he deserves the credit for that. Yeah, but Game of Thrones was popular at the time, so somebody just applied it to me, and it kind of stuck. And it was funny, like the other day, it's kind of surreal, like when people are like shouting that at you, I was coming out of Maryhill Halls in Glasgow, and people started shouting like King of the North, and I was like, this is weird to sometimes just like let that in, that people are shouting like that at you, and it was just quite funny. It was also like really weird for me at the time, when people were saying things like that, like when I was like working behind a till in a supermarket and stuff like that. People were like, oh, do you do that grappling? Or the time somebody like came up to me, and I was working on the tills in a supermarket on a Saturday, and it's like, my husband swears he's seen you on Sky Sports the other night.
And I was like, Aidan Stephen.
Yeah, I was cornering Aidan, yeah, and he's like, I seen you, and I was like, oh yeah, that was me and stuff like that. And I was like, well, anyway, that's like, here's your milk. So that was kind of a weird thing for me, really, like, because I started doing grappling matches and more kind of not super fights, but like one-off submission only matches where they would pick me against another guy, and they'd be like, right, you used to go at it. And then I'd be going back to work, and it was like, please boss, can I get this time off for a belt, for this title fight, for this belt? And I would be like, can I please get it off? And they'd be like, oh, as long as you come in and work really hard on Sunday morning, then like we can let you that off and stuff. So that was a bit of a
like they were doing you a favour or something.
Yeah. Did you ever kind of miss out on anything because of that kind of?
It would be rare, but yeah, I would have to be really. I would say that I prioritized when I was there. Like when I was working full time, I used to work in Aldi. When I was working like there, I really, really prioritized my holidays around competing in events so that I could get the time off for it. But yeah, there was a few times, like I had to kind of say, I can't do this competition that I would like to do. And it was just like all based around like getting holidays off work and things like that. Unfortunately, like that's what you've got to do. if you've got to work and you've got to ask for Saturdays off, everybody wants a Saturday off. They're happy to give you like a Monday or a Tuesday, but I'm like, no, I need this competition off. It's a Saturday or a Sunday. And one of the tough things I think as well is like all the competitions really for me I have to travel to. So a lot of the time it's coming back late at night.
Would probably be kind of Glasgow area.
Yeah, like so the last competition I done in Glasgow, we went down on the Friday night. The competition was on the Saturday. I was still competing. I'd finished my last match about 6:45. I never got back home until 1:30 in the morning.
Jesus.
You know, so a lot of people don't really realize how lucky they are when they compete in bigger cities, and their competitions are on their doorstep. I've always had to go quite far for my competitions, like at least to Glasgow. My next competition's in Liverpool, you know, so that just gives you an idea. Like I'll have to commit to going down there for a weekend, get the hotel rooms and stuff like that. So
is that kind of all out of your own pocket, or do you have sponsorship that helps along with that?
Majority of that, you know, you got to self fund that. You just got to self fund it, and yeah, it's just part of the price of what you do at the moment. There is like sponsorship and things like that, but you usually have to be sponsored by like a good company or whatever for a little while before they're willing to start paying your travel and things like that. You know, so there is available, but it's not.
Like you're kind of touching on working in retail. I kind of know you a bit more personally. You don't work in retail now. Do you want to talk a little bit?
Yeah, I can do. So I think I don't like now. I'm self-employed. So as well as doing grappling, I'm a sports therapist as well. I own Moray Sports Massage. I'm owner, run that. And it was just like a couple of years ago, I was like in my kind of sort of early 20s. I obviously was realizing that I didn't want to just work for someone all the time. Actually, when I left school, I went into like doing TV and film work. So
I've seen that. I've caught your YouTube channel was
oh
researching.
God, don't bring that up.
Yeah.
Don't look at those. Yeah, so yeah, that's what I thought I wanted to do when I was younger, right? So like the problem was with that is that at the time, like I believed I was just talented at it, and I was like, okay, like you're good at this. People should be knocking down your door for work and things like that. And when I went into kind of working there, I
was that filmmaking?
Like filmmaking, yeah. I would really wanted to do like camera operator, so like DSLR camera operator. And I used to like know my stuff really well, but there was so much that went into it, you know, and I believed that I was just I'm just talented at this. And again, I gave that up. I basically dropped that. And yeah, like went through a little bit of a difficult period of like not really being sure of what I wanted to do. And I was kind of roaming around looking for like, what am I talented at? What can I just start up straight away and just be good at and not have to put in time and effort in? And that's genuinely how I looked at it. I was like, I was good at that. I'm not good at anything else. I didn't believe I didn't believe like I would be good enough to work in any kind of like build my way up. I was just like, there's just no way I can build my way up. And I mean, I remember sort of going to this strength and conditioning seminar with a strength and conditioning coach called Simon McAvoy, and he's from Ireland, and he was working with the SBG Ireland people. And I remember he just said something to me, and he was like, "Do you think you're an athlete? You can barely like squat properly and move properly. You need like a really good physio, sports massage. You need to work on your mobility and stuff like that." And literally a penny dropped in my head. And he was like, "Who is that? Who is your sports therapist and stuff?" And I was like, "I don't have one." And then in my brain, like a voice came in and was like, "That could be you." And I was like, "Oh." So I remember going to see this physio, and he just blew my mind about what he knew about the human body. And I know these things now, but what he was telling me, I was just like, man, like I was just constantly sore in between my shoulder blades. And he would tell me like, you know, you just don't have the mobility here. You don't have the mobility in your back. It all gets caught up in like your lack of mobility is affecting you. And this is the outlet in between your shoulder blades is the outlet for all that kind of limited movement, you're just constantly sore between the shoulder blades. And I remember just the feeling of walking out of this guy's treatment room and being like, I feel $1 million. Like, I need to learn this. So I went away, and that sort of set the ball rolling for me when I was still working. I remember signing up to do massage. First, you have to do Swedish massage. And I think people laughed. They're like, why you want to do Swedish massage?
Was that locally or was that online?
Yeah, I'd done that in Inverness. So I would travel through to Inverness to do that. I remember sort of that I was working in a petrol station, and I was like, I need to do this. And I lied to my mum and dad and said, oh, they're not giving me the time off to do my like college course. So I was like, I need to leave that job. I hated it. So I went and left that job, and they I eventually found a job at Aldi, and I was like, well, listen, like I'm studying this course. I need the time off for it. And they would give it to me. So that was good for me. And yeah, I studied, and I'd done my sports massage course as well. And even like when I was doing that, I still wasn't sure that I would make anything of it. You know, I was still really like quite an unsure person about that. I suffered like from a real lack of confidence in my own like personal abilities at that time. And I suppose I was still working away in Aldi, and if it wasn't for a set of kind of catalytic events, I wouldn't have gone self-employed. I probably would have stayed in the safety zone. For me, I would have stayed working for someone else.
A lot of people don't want to take risks, right?
For sure. I knew so much that I wanted to take that risk. And I think it was just really scary just going out there into that open world. And I would tell people all the time, they were saying, oh, you're still here. And I was realizing like, I'm so unhappy doing this, right? And no offense to anyone who like, because millions of people work in like Aldi supermarkets and things like that, and it provides a good wage. I just knew that that's not what I wanted to do. And finally, when I kind of got the courage to take a good run and jump, it paid off for me, you know. And the funniest thing is, like, I can tell you this story. The catalyst for me leaving was somebody put in like this horrible complaint about me.
Yeah, I remember you reading this off on Steamcast.
Yeah, so somebody put in this horrible complaint about me, and it was all true. And I had this sudden realization, that is how people see me. I was like, that is how people see me and perceive me right now. And all that complaint that person put in is valid. So I was just like, that's all valid. And I realized then and there, my unhappiness is starting to show through. I had the worst attitude, like, you know, to working.
Affect on your personal life as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. It just stunted who I kind of considered myself to be. You know, like I considered myself to be like Kev who just works in Aldi. And then I knew I also had this other kind of life where I was doing well in grappling, but I didn't have that belief, because I was like, I've always got to ask for the time off. I've always got to kind of do this. I'll never be very good at it. You know, and I just decided then and there, I was like, this person's putting this complaint about me. And it was like, if I see him, I will leave the shop and go somewhere else, because...
So you knew the actual person themselves?
Yeah, so
anonymous,
basically, I was clever enough that I didn't like wearing a badge. I didn't like people knowing who I was, but she named me, and I was like, well, that person obviously knows who I am and knows my name. So I managed to find out who it was. Let's just say, So I found out who it was, but the review came through, and they pulled me in the office, and they were like, Kev, like, you know, we need a chat and stuff. And she was saying, like, in this review, she was like, Kevin ate sweets from his pocket while he served me. And I was like, yeah, that was true. Yeah, that was true. She said, like, you know, he never even, like, never said please or thank you or whatever. And I was just like, yeah, I'm so done with this. Like, so I remember just then and there being like, when I do sports massages for people, they kind of are like grateful and thankful that, oh, thanks, I feel good. And I was like, I need to go and do that. Like, I totally, and doing that, taking that run and jump, like, literally flipped my life totally around. My attitude to everything was so much more positive.
I was just about to say, one of the things like I appreciated the most when I was listening to your podcast with Stoomboy,
Yeah.
was that you said that you had a very unhealthy attitude towards failure.
Yeah,
And do you
100%.
think that this period of time, and obviously with becoming a grappler, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and competing and all that, do you think that was a massive part in the kind of flipping the mindset of the person you are today?
Yeah, I definitely had a really bad relationship with failure going through my whole entire life. If I look back, you know, I didn't want to take subjects in school. I failed my first exams, like my hires. I failed them both. And I had this attitude really of like, oh, shut up, you think you're good at school and stuff like that. I don't need that. And, you know, it was pretty embarrassing. I only took 2 hires and I failed them both the first time round. And I just had this horrible attitude to failure, the worst attitude in the world. I had a really fixed mindset that like, my abilities are my abilities. I cannot change them for the world. You know, I have just been born not good at maths, born not good at science and stuff. And the reality was I had a horrendous attitude towards failing. You know, I would run away from failure. So when I would try out a certain job, it was either I was good at it or I was bad at it. And I genuinely believed that throughout the whole, like, most of my kind of like teenage and adult years. And that kind of that's what I was saying. I believed I was talented when I was doing like camera work and things like that. And the reality was I had so much like improving to do, but I just didn't want to do it because I kind of thought, well, it either comes naturally to me or it doesn't. And you know, I suppose that stunted me throughout my whole entire time. And there I was, you know, like being faced with it again, like you know, are you going to run away from this? And I realized kind of in that sort of period when I wasn't doing so well at work and things like that, I was like, I need change. And, you know, I just realized I wasn't happy now. I'm going to be so much more unhappy in 5 years. And perhaps some of my opportunities, some of my boats would have sailed by that point. And I thought, I need to go now. And when I look back at that period, I definitely see it as I needed to get a head up of steam and I need to take a big run and jump and a leap of faith. And it paid off for me. And I mean, still, like, I remember when I was like, Dad, I'm like leaving, handed in my notice. And he was like, are you sure you want to do that? There was a lot of people who were like, oh, even when I was talking to customers, I'm leaving next Saturday's my last day. And I'm like, you sure you don't want to just stay on 1 day a week, 2 days? What if it doesn't work out? And a lot of people have that attitude across the whole of life, is like, what if it doesn't? But what if this happens? What if this happens? And they tend to think like, stay safe, like, don't take the risk. I think a lot of people don't think, well, what happens if everything goes way better than expected?
They only see the negative.
Well, we're naturally risk averse, people. We're risk averse creatures, you know. Stay safe, stay in your habit. That's what you know. And for me, you know, that was so that was killing me, you know. I just hated it. So when I honestly went away from that, I made more money than I did before. I had full control and freedom of my days. You know, granted, I can have the time off, but I know that I worked my ass off to be able to say, I did that. Because for a long time as well, I was doing like these sports massages as well as working. Start at 6 a.m, work till 2, maybe do 1 or 2 clients, teach kids class and train myself. Those were like full on difficult like days, you know what I mean? But doing that was like easily the best move I've ever made in my life. Easily. I mean, how I think now about someone would tell me what time I would have to eat my breakfast and have my coffee at, you know, and that I just can't even think about that now. I can go and eat lunch where I want at the time I want, see how many clients I want to see, you know, and if I want to take the time off for training or if I want to go somewhere, I can absolutely do that. And like that freedom to me is like one of the most important things. And I encourage people all the time around me to be like, you know, you can have that freedom too. Some people are like, "What? Oh, I'll need to ask my boss for time off." And I always like joke, I'm like, "I've asked my boss, he says it's okay."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Yeah, it's me." Yeah. So it was one of the best moves I've ever made in my life, was going self-employed with sports massage, because it definitely fits like my love for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and my love of training as well.
Has it increased your understanding, especially like we know that your jiu-jitsu's high level, but as you've got more into massage, learnt about muscles and things, has it opened your eyes a little bit differently?
100%. Learning the ways in which the body works and the ways in which the body doesn't work, more importantly, is like an important thing.
Yeah.
Also, just to understand that muscles, joints, what joint does this and what joint does that. So, for example, like a lot of people, they're like trying to move their knee in a funny way, and I'm like on the mat and I'm like, well, no, that movement is from the hip joint. That the hip is responsible for that movement, not your knee. Your hip will cause the rotation in your leg. Your knee will move, but it's actually coming from your hip, so you can use your hip. Also just understanding attacking certain joints and attacking like certain moves like heel hooks. A lot of people don't really understand what it is they're trying to do, what they're trying to break. And I do. I understand the bones and the joints that make that work. So that's a distinct advantage, like absolutely understanding. I know that when I twist this here, what happens, but also just what happens further up the chain. If I'm attacking your foot, what do I need to do? What do I need to do at your hip? That if I'm attacking your foot and your hip can still rotate, well, you're probably going to get out of that move. I need to be able to apply control at two ends of your lever. I need to be able to control the hip. I need to be able to control the foot and ankle, and then the joint in the middle, which is the knee. I know what movements it has naturally, and I can take advantage of those because I know the knee's not meant to twist. I know it's not meant to rotate. The hip is. So if I rotate at your foot and I stop your hip, then your knee's going to pop. So I understand that. I didn't invent the move. I'm not that clever, but I understand that, and it's helped me be able to understand it myself and help others hopefully understand it too. So that's like it goes so well. And what this guy Simon McAvoy who kind of asked these questions at the strength and conditioning seminar said, what would you do all day if you didn't work, if there was no such thing as work? And I knew that I wanted to be as close as possible to doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and be around athletes, even if it wasn't as one myself. And that it was a few side moves, like be a sports therapist. And at first I did want to just work with only sports athletes, but I get a lot out of working with just general everyday people who are in pain because I can help them understand their bodies a little bit better.
It's crazy that not only that avenue gave you more peace of mind in your own life, but it helped you become a better competitor and a coach at the same time.
Totally, 100%. And just being able to deal with people and understand people and have good, genuine conversations with people. A lot of the time when people come to me in pain, you help them understand their body a little bit, but you also kind of, you can explain to people just what's going on outside, like what's going on in your body, okay? Like you've got some pain, let's say you've got some knee pain, but vast majority of people actually have psychological, social pain. So, if someone's having a hard time at work, or if someone's under a lot of stress at work, has a lot of low job satisfaction, what else is going on in their life, they're more likely to be having worse pain. I might have a torn meniscus in my knee right now and not know about it, but because I live a life which is luckily quite high in kind of job satisfaction, I do what I enjoy, I'm unlikely to feel that. Now, Lee, if you might have a torn meniscus in your knee, but let's just say, for example, you have a very unrewarding job, highly stressed, something's going on in your life, God, your knee's just going to start killing. Those can be like massive factors in what pain you feel. Helping people understand that, it's like a massive part now of what I do, and I find that like a highly interesting sort of topic.
Are you a big believer in the mind-body connection kind of theory?
Oh yeah, 100%. There's more than just the mind-body connection. Usually, what people think of it is like yogis and say hello to the moment and channel your mind. But scientifically, there's a strong link between your work, not just the work that you do. Okay, if you've got low job satisfaction, you are significantly likely to experience back pain. And some people go, well, it's because I sit in a chair. And it's like, well, no, it's because you hate what you do like every single day and you have to sit in a chair and do it. So 100% believer in the mind-body connection in a lot of all aspects. Everything that I do, it's always like I'm trying to keep my mind and body healthy. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu does that. Ironically enough, having somebody else try to squeeze the life out of you or squeeze the air out of you is amazing for your mind as well as is your body. And even outside of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I'm constantly trying to like improve my body, improve my mind, do difficult things and challenging things and stuff like that, because I know it's good for me. I know that it's good for me both on the mats and off the mats, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Like I'm trying to always, what I do at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, helps me approach challenges in life, and vice versa. I make challenges for myself so that I know that I can do difficult things on the mat too,
That's kind of, I can see that from my own point of view, being someone as a hobbyist.
Yeah.
I feel when I go in there, maybe I had a hard day at work and I come out after a few hours of training, you feel a lot better. It's a kind of sense of relief, a little bit of a release. Yeah,
the biggest release. I remember the time I went back to training after like a couple of months off during the first lockdown. I remember just like the world's going to be okay, like this horrible sense of dread before, and then after I rolled, I honestly just felt like my tank was completely emptied. It had been overflowing with like stress. I was dying to have an argument with people about my opinions on
what. To find that person that put the complaint in at Aldi.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Like I was dying to have an argument with people, and you're just choking to just get your point across, and then rolling with someone, just that physical, you can't be thinking about, the COVID stats, how many people have got it, how many people are dying and stuff. You're just thinking about I want to take this guy's back. Yeah. What's he doing to me? I need to solve this moving puzzle that's coming at me. And that can honestly just have such a kind of relaxing effect on you. I think when I haven't done Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for a couple of days, I get a little bit angsty, like I can't sit still and stuff, and then I go and train and I just feel like super relaxed. I feel so much better about myself. But anyone who does it will tell you the same. Like once they start to make it part of their life, you kind of just, for me anyway, I just need it. Like I need to do it. It makes me feel so relaxed.
When did you get back into competition after the lockdown happened and that?
I started competing. I actually got this message from someone called Yusuf Nabi, who was he was creating this tournament. He was like, "Do you want to be in this tournament?" And this is just how messed up my mind was at the time. I almost said no. I was just like, nah, man, like there'll be better people than me. Out of competition for by this point, Kev? So the last competition I did before COVID was like February, and probably like just a few weeks before lockdown. I was in London and I had done Grapple Fest just before. So February, Grapple Fest. I was really busy the early 2020. I was like, I really, really want to make this the year that I go and travel, because I just become self-employed. I was like, yes, I'm so free. I'm so free to do it all. And I'd done like the Euros in January. I'd done Grapple Fest in February. I'd done
Grapple Club here that year as well.
Yeah, the Grapple Club one, that was in October. So that was after the shutdown. I'd done another one in London. And that was just when things got weird. Like a load of people never showed up to that. And we were like, what a bunch of losers. Why would they not do this? And then I remember walking around the shopping centre and stuff, and there was a few people wearing masks in London. And I was like, And I remember just talking to my friend Shay at the time, and he was like, it's going to blow over in like a few weeks. It'll be cool. It won't come here. And then when we went back, there was gyms being like, we're going to close. We don't have to close, but we're going to close. And I think they'd everyone done that expecting that like, you know, the three.
Coming,
well, I think they thought it's going to be done in 3 weeks. So we'll just close now and we'll be done soon. Yeah. So we closed as well. And then there was like the forced closure. We closed a few days before lockdown. I actually was in Manchester as well when lockdown was announced with Aidan. So Aidan was in Manchester, and that trip was so messed up and weird. They basically pulled the crowd like a few days before.
It was originally meant to be in London or something.
Yeah,
like that,
it got moved last minute, and we went down, and our opponent got changed, and we were in this hotel room, and it was like, we honestly thought like the army were going to like be blocking the roads and stuff like that. So we got back, and on Monday, we've had the fight, I think it was a Friday night, we got back on Saturday. By Monday, there was a full lockdown, you know, so that show happened, and it was so weird. We were in this arena, there was nobody else in it, just
like
the fighters.
First experience of anyone having to perform in front of no crowds.
I think what they said is like we were like one of the only live sports events in the world. And I mean, they were like, we've COVID tested everyone. So what they did was they held a thermometer up to your head and then gave you a little smiley face and was like, you're good. And that was it.
Enjoy the theme park.
Enjoy the festivities. It was, and yeah, nobody had the clue what was going on, but I remember kind of being like, I don't really want to go out. It was all happening while we were in Manchester, so that was early March.
It'd be interesting to see the viewing figures for that.
Yeah.
Oh, it would be cool. So there was, that was Mason Jones fought, I'm pretty sure Mason Jones fought Adam, from SBG, yeah. So Mason Jones won the welterweight title at that, and I remember it was good. But yeah, we were out for something to eat that Saturday, and they were like, you need to go, like, you know, we're no longer doing sitting.
Yeah.
And then it became no longer doing sitting from one day to we're not opening the next. And it was like, what is going on here, you know? So I was right at the kind of end of it, and then nothing really showed up. And I was really lucky I got to compete in September in a secret location, closed door show. So I got to do that. And then I got to do the Grapple Club one, which was like, that was really cool for me because that was the highest level guys.
I thought you got robbed. You had three very high level guys.
One of the guys in it just won ADCC.
Yeah. Is that Ellis younger?
No, Ellis, we've just actually had Ellis up. He's a good friend of mine now. I competed against Ellis. I competed against Owen O'Flanagan and Dominic Dillon. Dominic Dillon's just won on Polaris. Owen O'Flanagan just won ADCC trials. Ellis Younger's a black belt, but now he won No-Gi Worlds a year before that. So that was super cool, and that was a kind of awakening moment for me. I was like, oh, I didn't get smashed. But I remember when the guy messaged me to do it, and I nearly said no. Just because of what the lockdown had done, it kind of stunted my confidence and stuff. I remember I was just sat playing video games, drinking some whiskey, and that was very unlike me at the time. But I was staying up to like 2-3 in the morning, playing video games, drinking whiskey, and the guy messaged, do you want to do it? These are the people. And I was like, oh, fuck. And I remember my coach was like, Kev, you're going to be 30. Soon you're 29 years old. When if not now, when? And that's a really, like, that saying in my head, like, if not now, when?
Yeah, it's like a full circle moment, right? The same when you were talking about going self-employed and so on.
I just kind of had that moment of like, yeah, you're right. If I'm saying to myself, I'm not ready to beat these people yet, or I'm not ready to even compete with these people yet. And I was like, well, when will you be? You're never going to be ready. You are never, ever going to be ready as you think you're going to be. There's no such thing as the perfect time. Just go and do it. And I was so glad I did, because I actually had the most fun, you know. And then quite a lot of people, I got sponsored off of it. Quite a lot of people were like, I thought you did class, mate. Like, you were like, I thought you got robbed. Like, whatever, you know, like swings and roundabouts with decisions and stuff like that. I don't lose any sleep over that. But that was like a big thing for me. And that like gave me a real real good boost. Unfortunately, like just with the way things went with the world like shutting down again, I never really got to compete until about 10 months later. And that was like a big one for me. I've competed against Jack Brown. I felt the best physically and mentally I've ever felt for that in my life. Like, I just knew that was it. Like, I'm coming back to make a statement. You better not have forgotten about me.
I could tell you were pumped up in that interview.
Oh, super pumped, man. And just had been speaking with a mental performance coach as well, who's like really good, and he's a big proponent of having like an alter ego that comes out under times of stress when you're competing. That came out full scale, and I was like, oh my God, like when I bring this side out, like I can do really well. And I was just like shocked myself, and I was like, oh, that was pretty cool. And I just remember being like, nah, man, like just let your mind go. Like, and so when I was getting interviewed and stuff like that, I was like, get out of my way. Like, and I mean, yeah. So afterwards, then I got like a match against a black belt, and it was like, oh, weird. I'm gonna have to back up what I just said, and I did. And I was like,
the MMA
weird
fighter that came over to Evolution of Combat 9. I believe.
Yeah, so they were like, right, you're gonna get this match against one of Gunnar Nelson's black belts, and I was just like, so the name Gunnar Nelson, like, you know who Gunnar Nelson is? I've heard loads of people talk about him, and I was like, whoa, this guy's gonna be good. So I would say I've got loads more in the tank to perform with than what I showed that night. But for me, that was like another awakening moment. Like, yes, I can beat black belts. Yes, I can beat these people. And it's like weird how I think to myself. And I was just like, if none of this matters, like it doesn't matter who they are, what their name is and stuff. You can do it. You can compete just fine and win. You know, it's like so much about what's in your head and believing things and just having the confidence to even compete. If I give you an example, the absolute worst I've ever felt in my life is when I've talked myself out of a match. I looked somebody up before. I never even tried, and he scored 2 points on me early in the match, and then halfway through the match I was like, wait a minute, he's not even as good as what I think he is. He's nowhere near as good as what I think he is. He is pretty tough, he's good, but I could have beat him if I had, gritted out a bit. And I'll never forgive myself for that, because like I beat me there. Nobody else beat me. I beat me that day. I talked myself out of that. And I think a lot of people are doing that everywhere in life. They're like not even 100%. Willing to, they're not even willing to compete, because they're just like, that person will beat me. There's no point trying. So, and even if I'm forced to do it, I'll just lie down. And it's such a self-handicapping thing that people do. They go, I will self-handicap, because it keeps me away from this. The real scary thing is what happens if they win. They have to repeat that performance. They have to repeat the hardest thing they've ever done. They have to repeat it. Like, what happens if you get that promotion at work? Like, oh God, what now? Or what happens if you get that promotion in any kind of walk of life? What happens if you win the fights and you're fighting for the title and you get to the UFC? Like, people are scared. Sure. People are genuinely scared of what happens if things go well. They're much happier to stay
in a routine,
more comfortable. More comfortable with, I know what's safe, so I'll self-handicap, have loads of self-limiting beliefs, and it keeps me where I know I'm comfortable, So the worst thing I ever done was just honestly went out there and thought, this guy's meant to beat me, so I'll just kind of, and you will end up doing the things. You won't fight hard for every point. You won't fight hard against what he's doing. You'll just go, well, this is just meant to happen. So let's not make, I don't want to look stupid. So I'll just, I'll just let him have it type thing. And that was the worst I've ever felt. And I just promised myself after that, I will never do that again. No matter who it's against, I'd rather go out. And the times I've lost, I don't feel like I've lost after it, because I'm like, well, I've given it everything. I lost in some of those. That's the toughest competition I've ever done, like a year ago against Ellis, Owen, Dominic. And the matches that I lost, I was like, okay, it doesn't feel like I've lost. I'm okay with it, It feels way better than if you went out and were like, I'm probably meant to lose, so I am going to I'm just going to go out and lose. You know, you feel so much worse if you do that. So I would never do that again. I would say that was something that I needed to do. Maybe was learn how I felt after just going out and expecting to lose and losing. And I was like, wow, you know, he really wasn't as good as I gave him the credit for. I would probably say I needed to do that. Like,
I think like one of my favorite things about like viewing combat sports as a fan, and obviously now like getting to speak to people that are involved in combat sports, is there's a massive focus on humility, right? And I think you've covered that pretty well in what you were just talking about in terms of not a lot of people would admit to stuff like that, right? I think we live in a world where people like to have an invincibility complex, and I know a lot of people kind of take, like, for example, MMA at face value. Like they maybe see like Conor McGregor like coming out in mink coats and all that, and think,
of course, it's all
you know, everyone's just like that. But it's like there's a point where people can be viewed as superheroes, and I think it's like the most human thing possible to like hear from like bad motherfuckers, for lack of a better term.
We're all like, human beings, man.
Exactly,
we're human beings. Even those people who are up there and they're knocking people out, you know what? They still have doubts. They still have, you know, emotions and feelings. And we like to make them superhumans, right? We like to make them more than what they are. And they feel that, and they feed it back to you, of course. Like, so everyone thought Conor McGregor for a while was unbeatable, invincible, and now the book's been written on how to beat that guy, right? But for a while, same with Anderson Silva, same with a lot of people. For a while, these people, we were like, nah, they're superheroes, they're invincible, right? And it's not just with MMA. It's been going on for a long time. People were like, yeah, my karate coach back in the day, oh, he was a tough guy. Like, oh, he would kick ass now. He would kick Conor McGregor's ass. And, oh, this guy, he was just a monster. And it's just like, people like to do that. Yeah, and I think it's just a reflection of their own, like, well, I couldn't do it, you know. So this guy, he's the real deal. So I think you'll find probably some of the most humble sort of, like the humility of people.
A few guys yourself coaching, Kev, that came through the door, maybe kind of 1 or 2 lessons, and black belt in X, Y, and Z.
Yeah,
of course. Yeah, you still get it. People like, oh yeah, like, you know, I'll probably not need to join in with this. Like, I've got like a black belt. I remember telling this like funny story about this guy who came in, and like I was showing this footlock one day, and he was like wearing his karate outfit and his karate belt and stuff, and I was like, okay, like, do whatever you want. You're gonna meet humble people on the mats. Like, you're not gonna get shouted at probably by a Brazilian jiu-jitsu coach. They're quite laid back people, you know. Like all of the really, really amazing people, like the best coaches, okay, I've been like super chilled out, nice people, right? And like this guy was like, you know, if you did that footlock to me, I would do like this dragon death kick to you where I would just heal you in the chest. And I was like, cool, like go for it, because if you do that to me, I will break your foot. You know, I was just like, this is not going to end well for you.
Dragon death kick is the best name.
Yeah, like, I think that's what he was calling it. He was like, I think I would dragon death kick you or scorpion kick you. And we were like lying, and I had this foot like in a standard footlock position, and he was like, I'll heel kick you. And I was like, we can run this experiment as much as you like. You know, like, you're going to tap to this. You know, so getting back to the topic of like humility, that's a thing I think a lot of people like myself have had to work on, is believing in themselves. Sometimes a lot of people are way too humble. You need to kind of almost be a little bit deluded to be like, oh yeah, I can beat people. And we love it when we see those characters like Conor McGregor, okay? And because it is inspiring. I remember watching this documentary, and he's like literally sat in his house, and he's like, I'll beat Jose Aldo. And we love that when someone's like, look at this deluded ass like guy from Dublin, and he went and did it, right? We love that. And then after that, we give them all the superpowers. We're like, oh, look at his movement, it's unbelievable, and it's great, and it's all just part of the fun fantasy of sports, you know, like, look at them. And then when people get that, when they receive that and they start believing in it, they come out and they start throwing like spinning wheel kicks, and before you know it, they're paying off. But that's just the beauty of when someone fully believes in themselves, they've had success, you know. and they're just living out, like, they're not playing scared. They're just going out and not playing scared. They're just enjoying it, right? And that's like, you know, the real sweet spot of like performance and sports is that going out, not playing scared, and your moves are coming off. You know, have you ever played any sport and you're just like, I'm just trying not to lose? Like, you play terribly, you'll never take any risks, and you'll inevitably like lose. You know, have you ever seen a football team that's trying to hang on to a score in the last 5 minutes, and how often they're playing back, they're trying not to lose at that point? They're going to lose, you know.
It's like the body language kind of plays a part into it almost.
Oh yeah, like you know that you're playing not to lose. So like that's what happens. But when there's people going out playing truly to win and playing not scared, you know, they're not afraid of winning. That's when we love to see sports. When we see guys like Khabib and stuff like that go out who have just got utter belief in themselves, and you're like, wow, love watching that high level of sport. It's just people who are going out and they're not playing scared, you know. Things like that are amazing to watch. But then again, you see that like a lot of these guys are humble. Yeah, you've got the exceptions of the people who will not accept reality when they lose, and they're like, I didn't lose. You just got tapped out, and they're like, no, I don't count that. So that's obviously when you get people who you know, become like narcissists and stuff. But the majority of like really good combat sports athletes face failure on a regular basis. You know what I mean? Like, you get taken down by people in your own gym. Like, you have to be humble.
Either, right? It's always there.
Yeah, it's got to be there. Like, it's pretty much tell the kids this, tell anyone who's new, like, screwing it up is like a mandatory part of the process. Somewhere along the lines we became like really scared of that, because I think maybe in high school suddenly like screwing up's not an option. They try and make it out like screwing it up is a very ready option, and for a lot of you, it's probably the best thing that you can do. There's a lot of people who like went through life, never screwed anything up, and now they're like stuck, like they're an accountant or something like that, and they're like, oh, I can't make a mistake. Like, I encourage people all the time, like, look, it's going to be fine. Screw it up. I screwed up my first business, you know. It turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. Like, the worst thing that ever happened is ultimately the best thing. Yeah, and that's the kind of attitude I try and like tell people. Make the worst thing that ever happens to you. You lost your job. Like, try and make that the best thing that ever happened to you. You know, try and start your business. You know, worse things could happen.
Is that kind of how you take your competing as well? So if I lost competing, you know, try to learn from that loss, or
you have to. You
obviously have
you can't go through and expect combat sports you're going to lose, and you have to get acquainted with the fact that you are going to lose, statistically likely. You know, especially in a 1v1 sport. Like, someone's got
at least stats. It's not
like,
likely as you would think.
I've got some stats for you. Okay, so just going alone on Smooth Comp, you've competed in 12 competitions in Scotland as a purple belt. You have 54 wins. You have 5 losses, but technically you only have 3 losses, as you have 2 walkovers and then losses.
Oh, really?
So that gives you a win percentage of 94.74%.
I've never seen that. That's cool. Thanks.
You have 26 by points, 1 decision, 22 subs, and 5 walkovers yourself.
Cool.
So that's quite impressive. The competitions in this is a Scottish BJJ Open, Glasgow Open, Annual Cup of BJJ.
Yeah, they're all open tournaments, where basically that's the two styles of BJJ.
One of the things I was noticing as well is a lot of them seem to be absolute for you, Kev. I don't know if you want to explain what an absolute is compared to like a normal competition.
Yeah, so Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu absolute is essentially an open weight tournament. So usually what they do is they say medalists from all, like, so I'm a purple belt. So if you medaled at purple belt at heavyweight, or you medaled at lightweight, if you medaled, you can sign up for the open weight category, and they create a category for you. So in that, I can come up against someone who's much smaller than me and much bigger than me. And they're good fun. I like to do them. Fortunately, you know, I kind of walk around and usually compete about like 80 to 85 kg. So that's like a decent size. Some people, you know, are just never going to get away with it if they're competing under like 60. They might, you know, it's unlikely. But yeah, I enjoy doing those types of tournaments as well, like where you can win your weight division, and then if you're feeling good, you can go on and do the absolute, which I like to do. I like to test myself, and it's about putting yourself in the way of that failure. That's part of competing, really, is like I will try to actively put myself in the way of failing. You know, like this person's got a good chance against me, and you want to kind of go out, because really what competition does, and this is what I fell in love with, is I will have to prepare extremely hard. Okay, it puts a time limit on me. It's like, okay, well, you have to get as good at the things you want to get good at by this date. Okay, and then if you lose, someone is showing you your weakness. They're exposing it, an area you never even knew you were weak at. You know, they beat me because they did this. And it's like, okay, well, now I know that. And now also I'm collecting data on other people and what they're doing and what I need to do to beat that kind of person. So I'm suddenly collecting lots and lots of information. I then take that information to the next one. And it's like, I've kind of got like a database in my head, a little bit of like, okay, this is what I can expect from someone like, you know, of that body type, this who comes from that gym, that area, or even if it is the same person. Okay, here we go. Like, now I get to test my skill against you. You beat me once, can you do it again? Or, you know, I've beat you once, I will put the pressure on myself to be like, that first time was a fluke. You've got to do it again, you know? So that's what I enjoy. So that's the open competitions. Another thing that I do is like submission only. So where they go, you know, you are matched up against this guy. So
how do they do their matching? Is it all weight, belt? What
generally belt doesn't come into it as much, because you can get a purple versus a brown versus a black. Or even if you are a black belt, you can have been a black belt for 10 years against someone who got their black belt last week. Mm-hmm. You know, so there's like that kind of element to it. And it's just who they think makes a good match, you know? So I've been enjoying doing those, been fairly successful at those, and like they're really, like, for me, good fun, but they're quite high pressure, you know, because you don't get a chance to redeem yourself that day. You know, you just have to go away. If you lose, you have to go away, and that's it, you know. So I put a lot of effort and preparation into those types of tournaments, the sub only style ones. So I've got another one coming up in November 20th on Grapple Fest, so I'm going to look forward to that. But that's one match, right? If I lose, I go all the way down and I go to Liverpool. And if I lose, that's it. I don't get another shot. If I win, magic, on to the next one. And that's the kind of way I go, is I try not to sit and be like, oh, I've won, like, and sit and pat myself on the back. Kind of thing. Yeah, just kind of be like, right, okay, next. Yeah, you have to do that. You know, otherwise you'll never get anywhere. You have to kind of, each one is like a huge mountain to climb in itself, but then when you look back, it's really just one small step in a bigger journey. I tried really hard to beat this guy. Okay, well, the next one. And then you look back and you're like, wow, look how far I've come, like competing against this person and this person and this person. And that's what's like a really rewarding aspect of it, is like looking at what you've done, you know, and the challenges, and thinking, wow, like, this is going to be tough. But then you're like, oh, I managed to come through that. Like, okay, this one's going to be tough. Like, okay, this one's going to even be tougher, you know. So this next one will be tough. The guy who I've got is. Do
you study your opponents, or do you kind of? Yeah. Are you looking at every part of their game, or what they're strong at? Or,
So I will look at, like, for example, if I look at the last match, it was difficult for me to be able to study my opponent because he's got MMA fights and he was knocking people out. So, but what information can I gain from that? He's like good, he's explosive. Again, data collection, he is going to be good at getting back to his feet. He's going to be good at getting takedowns. I'm going to have to wrestle hard. You know, the match before that, I studied my opponent, Jack. I studied him inside out. I knew which side of his hip that he liked to play on, so therefore I would go to the other side. I knew what move he preferred, so I knew if I wanted to, I can avoid it. Now, this is another thing, like if you go out to play to avoid something, like, oh, do you ever see UFC champions that are like, oh God, I can't go down there. I can't start doing this with this guy because
I only fight forward. You fight up.
Of course, you're like, well, this guy's got to worry about what I'm going to do. So you can't be like, you've got to have requisite variety, which is like, I will do what I need to do at the time I need to do it. And you can't be like, uh-oh, he's done his A-game move. That's me done. You know, if you look at have you seen the Queen's Gambit? Have you seen that Netflix? Netflix thing?
Yeah, I've heard about it. I haven't actually.
Or if you understand anything about chess players, right? They religiously study matches.
Yeah.
Constantly. Like, so that guy, okay, we're creatures of habit. That guy is going to try and do that move again. Yeah. Like, so I'm just going to be like, okay, my opponent, I will need to watch for this. And it's helped me so much. You know, I'm quite good at reading what people are able to do. I'm good at reading what I think's coming. And I've not really been submitted that many times, which I'm quite proud of.
6+ years counting since last time you were submitting in competition. I don't know if that's right.
I remember being submitted by a guy called Tristan, and I think that was maybe about 2018. But before that, it was a little while before. Can't really remember.
1 in 6 years.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad.
None since the new world began in 2020.
Not since the new world began. Yeah, like post COVID.
Yeah.
Said that now. Damn yous. No, like, so that is something, you know, I try to read what people are doing, so that helps me. Yeah, I definitely study what's going on. It's a super important part of watching other people's games. You can learn from them, learn what they are good at, steal their moves, or or just be aware that, like, when they stand with their right foot forward, they are likely to try this move on this leg, you know. For example, match with Dominic Dillon, like, I was able to sprawl hard because I knew he would shoot from my right leg, and I just kind of knew it was coming.
Wrestling champion or something.
Yeah, he's a catch wrestler, and I was like, right, okay, that's fine. I'm gonna sprawl here, try and move around to his back. You know, and we ended up getting in a scramble, and I ended up on mount, and I was like, whoa, that went better than planned. You know?
One thing, like, as a kind of outsider looking in at the sport and that, like, I've obviously watched a lot of your grappling matches in preparation for this, but obviously watching your teammates as well, there seems to be like a common theme with the fighting that comes out of the gym of its pressure and it's relentless. I don't know if that's like a conscious thing that's trained at the gym or if it's just something that's like came about by coincidence, but I'd imagine it's the former.
Yeah, so I think I do well when I'm going forward and I'm trying to put the pressure on, and I believe that, like, if I keep doing it, the other person will break. I was like, you'll break first. You know, if I keep going forward, you're going to break first. You know, when, like, Ginge is fighting or Aiden is fighting, like, I think it's the same. Like, you have to keep going forward. You know, it's just something I definitely try and give it to people. And I think quite often what you see in matches is at what I call an agreed period of rest, right? So we're both tired and we both stand back and take this big deep breath, and then we go, okay, let's go again. If you can break that, you tend to break your opponent. Yeah. So if you stand back, okay, and take a breath, and you expect me to do the same, but I take a step forward, then it's suddenly like a psychological battle of, like, you taking a step back and you want a breath, and I've shot in you, and you're like trying to get your breath and trying to relax, and I keep breaking your rhythm and pattern of wanting to kind of rest, because there is periods in a match where you will have to kind of find a place to rest, you know,
for sure.
And if you kind of time that with someone, if you're looking at someone and I'm like, I know you want to rest, and I'm tired too, right? There's no joke about this. I'm tired too. There's that feeling in your chest a lot of the time of, I will give anything to stop. You know, if you're running or something and you're like, I'm so tired, I would just give any excuse to stop. But you can't, because, you know, you've still got someone to finish in front of you or take down, or, you know, you need to win this, like, a positional battle. Like, you need to, like, fuck that feeling.
Yeah.
Like, your mind is, you're constantly saying in your mind, like, oh yeah, man, I'm tough, I would manage that, you know. But then suddenly what you'll find, a lot of people when they first compete, they're like, I was just so tired.
Yeah.
And it's the ones who can kind of shut that voice up in their head that tend to do well, because they're like, I'm so tired. And that's where people, you know, they give in. They go, oh, I'll just throw it away because then I can rest. You know, then I'll feel, and they always feel worse. I'll tell you that they will always feel worse. If you can shut that voice up and keep going forward, you're going to feel so much better about yourself that you did it, you know? So it is like relentless forward pressure is just like a good strategy, a good thing to do when you're fighting, you know?
Yeah.
And shut the voice up in your head that tells you you're tired and you're wanting to stop. Because so is he. You need to make that voice in his head get louder because he's coming forward.
I guess you've got to assume that he's not going to let that voice get the better of him, because if you think that for a moment, then the doubt creeps into yourself of, oh, maybe I can slow down if anything.
You've got to also be thinking he's thinking the exact same thing.
Oh, he's got the same thoughts as you. Like, Aiden actually told me this, like, you know what, Kev, if you're scared, and the chances are that other person's scared too, right? Unless you're like completely mismatched. Yeah. Everyone's got a natural bit. It's just not normal to like go somewhere and have no doubt. If you've got no doubt, you're maybe not performing, or you're maybe not competing at the level that you should be, you know? If you've got absolutely no doubt, okay, you should have absolute belief in your ability to do so, but it has to be challenging, right? You know, you have to find that like whoever you're competing against is a challenge. Otherwise, you know, what's the point? Like, it has to be difficult, right?
So it's going to stay at that level. If you
yeah, of course. Like, so you have to. It has to be difficult, but you know, naturally, human beings have some doubt. It's just the people who let the doubt get the better of themselves and let the doubt cripple them and handicap them. You'll have seen like famous examples of people choking, just can't. The doubt suddenly gets the better of them, you know, and just like they freeze up and they just can't do things like that. That's a real example of it, you know. People who just become suddenly crippled by their own mind, they just can't perform, can't do things, you know.
I wanted to ask about, obviously you just kind of came off the back of Evolution of Combat 9 where you fought Magnus Iverson, have I said that? Ingvarsson. I knew it was going to mess it up. Never mind. But you won the interim title there.
Yeah.
And I was wondering of the state. Feel free to tell me not to ask about this or whatever. Cool. But I believe is Harry McKnight is currently holding the undisputed belt. Is that what they would call it?
Yeah, I suppose you would. It's a funny situation where you're getting interim belts in grappling. Because
like the UFC, they're smarties, don't they?
Yeah. So like. I suppose what it is like the guy Harry McKnight, you had the belt, hasn't competed in a long time.
Right.
I mean, at the end of the day, right, it's like if you've not competed in that long, do you really have the right to say?
Yeah.
Or it's just like you could say, well, you know, with everything that's been going on, like, fair enough, like, got to give that guy a decent chance. I'm sure I'll come across him at some point. And again, in those interviews, I mentioned his name, right? Don't know the guy. Sure, he's probably very nice. But, like, unfortunately, had what I want. So, you know, it just happens to be a person. He just happens to be someone that has the thing that I want, right? So I would like happily enough consider myself the champion of like EOC for whatever that's worth, you know. At the end of the day, someone just comes along and says, hey, here you go, like you're the best. You're the best. But you know, of the pool that's wanting to compete. But yeah, like interim champ like is what it is. Try not to think too much about like limiting myself or being like, oh, you're champ of this, you know. It's grappling, like, so I could turn around and be like, well, I'm gonna make my own promotion and I'll make that person the champ, you know. Like it's grappling. It's just a good high level match for me. He's a black belt. He's obviously done well to get that belt in the past, you know. So I'm sure me and him, I think we're scheduled to meet maybe next February now. So
cool.
Quite a few. Sorry, Ryan.
A lot of fighters tend to view the belt as, a lot of people seem to think that, oh, they just want the belt because it's gold or it looks nice or whatever. But I think it's more the symbol of the belt, right? Because the belt shows that you are the best. hence why it says undisputed next to it.
Yeah, like I suppose like you could buy a belt.
Yeah,
you could
like
buy
Kobe
one.
Covington or something.
Yeah,
like that.
you could buy a fake one.
Do you know everybody was like using that old UFC belt and carrying it away?
Yeah, you could buy one, but I suppose it's just a recognition of like hard work, like difficulties, and again like the tough periods of it takes a lot out of you. Like sometimes, you know, like going up to the hospital with like stitches in your eye and you're like, fucking hell, like, you know what I mean, like so annoyed. And also just even things like sacrifice, like missing out, like it ultimately it's good for you, but like, yeah, I'm not able to go to this thing. I've got a match in a couple of weeks. What's it for, Kev? Like, oh, I'm going to go and grapple this guy. Like, and some people are just like, oh, it's not a big deal. But then you get this thing, and then some people look at it when they walk in the gym door. Some people ignore it and they go, oh, that is, the kids go, is that yours? Did you win that? And I'm like, yeah, I did. Get to be cool for 2 minutes. But no, it's more like, yeah, it's a recognition of like hard work, but it's a big shiny medal at the end of the day. You know what I mean? Like as soon as you win them, for me, that feeling lasts a very short period of time of feeling good about myself after winning. It lasts a really, really shorter and shorter to the point it sometimes lasts a couple of hours, and then I feel miserable for about a week, because genuinely what happens is as you aspire to be better, okay, your aspirations of getting better continue to roll on, and then you do get better, okay, but by the time you've got better, your aspirations have gone further again, and so you live in this constant state of it'll never be good enough at times. So Kurt Cobain said, I'm worse at what I do best, and for this gift I feel blessed. So he thought he was, you know, a good singer-songwriter, but he was never as good as what he wanted to be, right? And that's the irony of that as well. Yeah. You know, he was never going to be as good, or he was never get to perform as good as what he aspired to, right? And I suppose that's like essentially the crux of like combat sports, is you will never be perfect. There is no such thing as perfect. There's no such thing as unbeatable, you know, realistically. But you're just going to have to deal with that, and you're just going to have to try your best to be as good as what you can be. So sometimes I'm like, man, I watch that fight back and something, and I'm like, I should be doing better than that. Because your aspirations of how good you're wanting to be are, you know, have already moved on from like the time you fought. You're like, okay, well, now what next? Oh, man, like I should have armbarred that guy there, but that's the risk you take. When you obviously look back, you're like, wow, like I've come a long way. Like, you know, I'm happy that I did that. But quite often the way we're like looking forward, looking to the next one. So unfortunately, sometimes for me, for a week or so, I feel pretty kind of like, I need another one so that I can aspire to do what I want to do to that guy. So I can, if I don't submit him, I want to finish him, you know? So that's like what a lot of people maybe don't realize about it. You might just feel like people are going around, oh yeah, like I'm the man, I won. A lot of people won't let that in. I think it's in the book Bounce by Matthew Syed. Like some Olympic champions and stuff like that are just like, so what? Like, yeah, that's your life's work. How do you feel? Great. How long does the great feeling last? Like sometimes a relatively short period of time. That's reality. You know what I mean? And that's something you got to work on. You should absolutely feel proud of yourself for winning. I think what a lot of people like me are kind of concerned about is you don't want to seem like a self-congratulatory asshole. Like, oh yeah, you remember the time I won that fight like in P7? You know, I was still living off of it. Like, oh yeah, I won this grappling match at white belt. Like, guys bow down in front of me. Like, you know, everybody knows that one person. So you don't want to be that. You want to constantly be putting it on the line, if that makes sense. Yeah.
You will hear a lot of that P7 story in any local pub establishment in Moray.
There's genuine pub hard men that are like, yeah, I boxed when I was like 14, or they're telling stories about their local kickboxing competition, how I battered somebody at my Taekwondo competition when I was 9 and stuff like that. And I was like, all right, get over it. Like
Scott Ramsey was saying that when he was at a gig, because obviously Scott trains at SBG.
Yeah.
And one of these guys came up and was talking about pressure points. You know, like you must have been watching some of these like legit as fuck videos on YouTube. You know, where like the guy like flicks someone in the head and they all fall down like dominoes. And stuff like that.
That was like, so again, we live in this world, right, where we are quite aware of, you know, like, you know, we're watching UFC. That's to me science, right? If it worked, you know, if pressure point 95 worked, where I put my thumb here, wouldn't someone have got somebody's back and done that and it would have worked? Right, but science is like that. To me, that's like science. Like every week there's UFC, right, and nobody has won yet with this move. But some people are in this crazy world where they're like, nah, like you don't know about these pressure points, and it's like super dangerous, right? Because when I first went into wanting to learn how to do, I'll tell the story of how I got into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right? But like when I first thought I was wanting to get into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I thought I was kind of looking for something like Aikido. Like, you know, you just grab my wrist and you're done, man. Just grab my wrist, go. Like, that's what I thought I wanted to do, you know? And that's what I kind of believed was kind of real. And it kind of, when I turned up to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. Not at all. But I fell in love with it, luckily, you know. So when I was younger, I'd done taekwondo and stuff.
Instant, Kev, or
pretty instant. Yeah. I wouldn't say I instantly fell in love with it, right? But I didn't because I began in Elgin and I was going to college in Aberdeen. I didn't really find a place to do it, so that took about a year to kind of settle into coming back home, training at home, finding somewhere to go in Aberdeen, and that's how I did it. But I mean, the way I got into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right, is I got beaten up a whole load of times when I was younger, and it like massively affected my confidence, to the point I was just like a terrified individual, and I would bark way louder than what I could bite. And deep down, I knew I couldn't fight. But if somebody bumped into me in a pub or something like that, I was going to let them know about it, right? I was like, fuck you, like, and I would just hope that person, like, didn't want to take it seriously, right? So I remember lying on this sunbed. I'd gone away with friends from school, or who I thought were friends, right? And, you know, boys' holiday, and I was lying flat in the sunbed, and one of the group that I was with was like, obviously knew that I lacked confidence because I was an easy target because I'd been beaten up that many times in school, right? It was like, get off that sunbed, otherwise I'm going to crack you, right? And I just had this instant realization when I'm lying on the sunbed. I was like, there's loads of girls around. I'm going to get made a fool out of here. He knows that. I'm lying on my back. And if I get up, I have to escalate this to punches, right? That situation, suddenly, a lot of times you'll realize there's a confrontation. You know that you can't escalate that confrontation to throwing punches, right? You know, it just doesn't deserve it. Like if somebody bumps into you in a pub or something, you can't just elbow that guy in the head. Like that's not right. So I knew, I was like, well, he's threatening to punch me. This situation has escalated. If I get up and start throwing punches, well, I'm not a very good boxer, so I might get punched, fall back, smack my head open on the poolside, right? And that happens if you know boxing, okay? But you're taking the chance that if you punch someone, they are not as good a boxer as you, or you're taking the chance that, you know, if you punch someone, what happens is you either knock them out or they get to throw a punch back at you, possibly, you know. So this guy, you know, was like, I'm gonna batter you if you don't get off that sunbed. And I just bitched out and was like, okay, I'll get up. And I remember like storming off to the room, and one of the guys I was with had bought a martial arts magazine. And on the front cover was two of the Gracie family. I think it was Hickson and Hoyce, maybe. There's a famous photo of one doing a flying armbar to the other one on the beach in Rio. I now know that, but to me, I was just like, what are these guys doing? Yeah. If I could have done that downstairs, that would have been good. I need that. And I remember just in that moment being like, well, I need to learn some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I kind of then went on a search to find it. And it took me a while to kind of come across someone that was teaching grappling, as it were. But I remember then being like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in YouTube, early days. I was like, try to find it constantly. And that's how I started getting into it. And when I first got into it, it took me that little while, but it eventually found me a group of friends, because I didn't really have proper friends at the time. I had people that I thought were friends, you know, who would threaten to punch me if I was on their sunbed. That's what got me into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and that's where I kind of found being quite calm. And without Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I don't like the idea of who I might have been. I would have been a very unhealthy person, still with a very unhealthy attitude towards failure. I would have not liked who I would have been, because, like I said, I was shouting at people in pubs for bumping into me because I was terrified. And that's the reality of it. I know that now. I was just terrified of, people and fighting. And I found Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and, it's made my life so much better because of the friends that I've made. It's made my life so much better because I'm so much more calm and relaxed, and I know what's real. Like, I know that, it's unlikely that somebody's going to jump out on me, but I don't need to prove myself against somebody that bumps into me in a pub. I can easily let that go. Well, there's a lot of people out there who are just dying to kind of be like, don't walk all over me. It's because they feel small anyway, insecure, right? Yeah. They feel small and insecure. And, like, if I was still that guy who was, working in the tills and that, and being like, hey, don't you speak to me like that. Like, I know I don't need to do that because, I feel happy at what my abilities are. And, you get a lot of people who fight in the streets and things like that. They're just trying to prove themselves. I know that wasn't for me, but I just knew that I was scared. And Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has given me so much more. And it's just like, it's been like the biggest and best thing that's happened to me in my life is learning how to grapple, because you also have to trust people. You learn to trust people. People weren't very nice to me when I was younger, and it made me not like want to trust people, but now when you do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, when me and Lee roll, we have kind of unspoken agreement that if I get you in an armbar, Lee, I'm not going to break your arm. I'm not going to put you unconscious. You respect that if you tap me or I tap you, that then we stop and then we clap hands and we go again. Some things happened to me when I was younger where people would say like, come on out, Kev, like, we're going to go up the road and stuff like that. And they were really trying to just set about me. You know what I mean? So that leads to not being very trustworthy of people. If people then know that you're an easy target in school, like I got beaten up when I was like 12 years old, just when I was about to go to school, and I was just terrified of everyone. But then people knew I was an easy target, so I got beaten up more, and finding Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for me has led me to be able to trust people a lot more. And I've given my trust to people who are worthy of it, like the people who I'm friends with are good friends because I train with them. You have a personal human connection with people. If you're like lying on top of someone and they're like freaking out and stuff like that, I know it's going to be okay because of the person who's on top of me. I trust them, so like that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has given me so much confidence as a person. I've been able to see like the faith in humanity almost, whereas before I don't like who I would have become without it. Like without it I would have been a really scared person, like a dog barking at the wind. I would have just barked at anyone and everything, and I was just terrified, and it's given me that kind of confidence. And without Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I definitely wouldn't have started my own business and things like that, because I looked at the wins in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and thought, hey, like, I've managed to kind of string together a few wins. Why can I not do something else? Why can I not do this in business? Why can I not do this in other areas of my life?
I don't even know where to go with that. There's so many avenues to that story that I want to go with.
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is that you can apply it to almost any aspect of life.
It's crazy how it's
so adaptable for life.
Better. You give a lot to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right? But it equally gives as much back to you as I guess 100%. The way that I'm trying to say it.
If you stick at it.
Yeah. One thing that I want to bring up, you mentioned Rickson Gracie in that story that you'd seen him on the magazine with Horace and that.
Read his book recently. It's amazing.
He also gave you his approval when you were competing in 2018, was it? You just pulled off an armbar and he's like cool. In the background giving.
There's videos of that. That was pretty cool, man. So I was doing the Rickson Gracie Cup, and Rickson Gracie, who's like a martial arts legend, and Pedro Sauer and they like pointed at me, and I'd done this armbar, and I was like turned back around, and I was like, Hickson Gracie just watched me do an armbar. That's pretty cool.
That must have been so surreal, mate.
Yeah, like, man, honestly, some of the things that have happened in my life from doing this are surreal. Like the people I get to spend time with and see and things like that, it's genuinely surreal. And all you need to do is just be consistent and just keep turning up at it. Like, that's honestly it. There's no special formula. You just need to keep going. But for sure, like, got to compete in front of Hicks and Grace. I can't even think of any other ones. There's probably loads, right? But like things like that are like kind of special to me. I read his book recently, and it's phenomenal. Just like what a life that guy had fighting, just warrior samurai mentality. And I'm like, man, I absolutely love that.
Was it him or Hoist that fought at UFC 1? I think
it was Hoist.
Yeah, because they wanted to show that the smallest out of the lot of them could be effective at what they do.
For Hickson,
So Hickson was a beast. So Hickson was a total beast, and he was winning. But also, it goes into this in the book, there was some like family disputes about money. So Hickson was fighting in Japan, and his brother Helson, I think, was, you know, in America, and he was doing the marketing and things like that, and he wanted a piece of each bit of pie, if you know what I mean. So then Hoist was the kind of more what should we say? He was the kind of brother that Helson had a bit more influence over, and was like, okay, you go in. And Helson convinced Hoist Gracie to compete, and Hickson goes into that in the book that like, I think Helson Gracie, who he like was instrumental in the kind of birth of the UFC, you know, he was about the dollars. They all were, you know what I mean? They weren't just fighting for free either. Hickson Gracie fought for over $1 million at one point in Pride, you know? So, there's like that's like a fascinating family. They've got roots in Scotland as well. He talks about being proud of his, you know, warrior ancestor Scots.
Someone told me that, and I totally thought it was disinformation. I was like, "There's no way the Gracie family from up
Gracie,
here."
I'm pretty sure Gracie's a Scottish name.
You've got a Gracie that trains at the gym, don't you?
Yeah, there's a lad who he just lives a few doors up the street from me. So yeah. Gracie's a Scottish name. He mentions it in his book. He's proud of his warrior culture. And something that I've thought about before, he spoke about how his family were like the Scottish clans in a way, because they fought each other. Mm-hmm. If they didn't have someone to fight as a united front, they would fight each other. And I totally think that's like a true thing. Like, 100%. We are so bad at like bickering amongst ourselves, for sure. Like, but even Hickson knows about that.
I've got some stuff, Kev, about John Danaher's. You trained over in New York for a little bit.
Visited John Danaher's gym. Pretty cool.
Do you want to speak about that? I've got here, I remember briefly a story about being on the mats in belt order or something like that.
Okay, so so I turned up at Renzo Gracie gym in New York, which is a famous gym. There's the Danaher Death Squad. Okay, so I wanted to train under this like enigmatic character, John Danaher, who is like unreal, by the way, but also has like a presence like I've never felt either. So he like walks into the room, claps his hands, and everyone goes quiet, and he talks very quietly, so everyone listens intently. So I went over there, and like I learned some really cool stuff that I still teach today. And so what I learned, I thought, right, well, there's a really good guy who's famous called Eddie Cummings, right? And I made a beeline for him in rolling, yeah? So if you think about the mat in thirds, okay? What I didn't realize that I had gone in with the sharks. Like, in the top third, if you're rolling in front of this guy called John Danaher, you're the real deal. I mean, you are like real good. Now, the middle section of the mat is like competitive purples, browns, but very good guys. The lower section of the mat is where the injured people from the top section get spat back out into, right? So I rolled with this guy called Eddie Cummings, and he 1 week later won EBI. I'm sure he won it. And he chewed me to bits, man. He wrecked my foot. He popped my foot. And now their stories came out about him afterwards that he was a bit of a dick with that. He would try to
he
hurt.
Would,
He would hurt
intend to do
people.
it,
Yeah. I've never rolled with someone and been afraid that I would be hurt. If you know what I mean. And this guy was doing his best. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, he is really
he's
not
trying to end you.
He's not holding back. I'll say that. You know, I was like, oof, this guy's really. I've never rolled with anyone, and I've thought, this guy is deliberately trying to harm me like something special, but Eddie done his best. But he popped my foot, and John Danaher was coaching him doing it. I was like, he doesn't need any more help. Like, I need help. So John Danaher is like one of the best coaches in the world, and he's like, take that on, Eddie. And I was just like, no, trying to tuck it in. But man, he popped my foot, and I had to walk about New York with a dodgy ankle for a couple of days. But John Danaher's gym was, I got the wrong impression from it almost like because of that one experience. But I went back in the afternoon, I spoke to John Danaher, and he was like, oh, come back at 12. And I was like, okay, I will. So I came back at 12, and it was really good. It was really enjoyable. There was a lot of people on that mat, like Jake Shields and stuff like that. I got to roll with a lot of cool people. Karol Pravik. There's guys like
Danaher worked with George St. Pierre, or did work with
he
George
did.
St. Pierre.
There's guys, I can't remember his name now. He's one of the very early UFC heavyweight champions. Rico Rodriguez? Yeah. He was
leg kicks, was he not?
Yeah, he was there. Competed in ADCC early on against Marcelo Garcia. He was there. I didn't even know. Actually, another cool story I'll tell you about. I was rolling down at. So this is to do with obviously rolling with people and then discovering who they are afterwards, after you're just like, who is that guy? So I was rolling at Ross Nichols' gym. Ross Nichols is a really good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt down in London. I was down there a few weeks ago. And so this guy, wearing some old kit. And I was like, who's this guy? So I was like, yeah, caught eyes. That's how it happens in Jiu-Jitsu. You kind of catch eyes. And you're like, okay, nod. Yeah, you and me. And I rolled with them, and then I was like, whoa. And they were like, oh, you done well there. That was John Hathaway. And I was like, he's like a UFC welterweight. He was like a great British guy. Like, it's a name I've not heard in ages. And I was like, no way. Like, I just rolled with John Hathaway, you know? And that's like, yeah, just a cool thing. So like Ross looked over at me and was like, yeah, that was the tough round, wasn't it? John's real. And I was like, who is that guy? And he's like, John Hathaway. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, you know what I mean? So that's one of the amazing things about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is you get to go and meet these people. And like, there's sometimes an amazing mix of people on the mat, and you don't even know. Sometimes you should know, but you don't, because they're just there to enjoy the thing that you enjoy, you know? And you get to meet amazing people through it, you know? Like I get so fortunate I've gotten to roll with like, you know, Eddie Cummings and stuff like that, or get to share the mat with Gordon Ryan. You know, Gordon Ryan was at that session. He's the greatest grappler in the world type thing. I've been to like Hodger Gracie's gym. Hodger wasn't there, but a lot of good people were, you know, like that's one of the fantastic things.
And stuff and that.
I've never been to Ireland and trained. I've trained at the SBG gym, Manchester.
Matt Thornton seminars. Like,
yeah,
been a few of them.
So Matt Thornton is John Kavanagh's. He's John Kavanagh's head coach. You know, so that's one of the fantastic things about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, in the sense that if I wanted to train with Cristiano Ronaldo, right, it's just not going to happen. If I wanted to train with some of the best footballers in the world, I'd be laughed at. You know, I can genuinely turn up at someone's gym, pay the cash, and get to train. And if that person is a nice guy, like they'll maybe go, hey, yeah, I'll have a round with you. Most of them do. You know, most of them don't take themselves so seriously that they wouldn't train with you, you know. And that's one of the things I think is really cool about doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
I read John Kavanagh's book, you just mentioned him there, and he has kind of a similar story of how he took up Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to yourself, because he took a couple like beatings when I think he was out a night out with his girlfriend, and he was trying to help someone and all that. But he was talking about how he was like learning on the doors and stuff like that. He became a bouncer, and John Kavanagh's not the biggest of dudes, right? He's probably about 5'11",
something like that.
Yeah, not that big. I've met him as well, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I met John Kavanagh actually before my first ever MMA fight, right? So he was there, and I remember like I'm about to go out, and I'm like shitting myself. Okay, yeah. Who pops his head through the curtain? He's like, Kevin. And I was just like, no way. And he was just like, oh, good luck and all that. And I was like, man, no. And he's like, I'll be watching. And I was like, well, thanks, no pressure now. So I won.
Foggy Juice starts playing.
Yeah. So he was like, oh, good luck. And I'd been I was really inspired by him and Conor McGregor before Conor McGregor is who he is now. But I'd been watching his documentary and stuff, and was like, there is no opponent. And John Kavanagh pops up and shakes my hand and is like, I'll be watching. And I was just like, no pressure. So I won. And then he tweeted me and then was like, well done, I'll be watching your career with interest. And I was like, so cool. And then he sent me a video message for my next fight and was like, well done, I was really impressed with, just like, people don't have to do that, and they were just really nice and did, so like, that's what I love about it.
Like, that dude seems like one of the most down to earth like people on this planet.
For sure.
I remember reading in the book as well when Conor was like an 18-year-old and they're maybe doing what he's doing now. As an 18.
Conor stole from him.
Yeah, he didn't pay like gym fees and stuff. Like, he would nip out the back of the door and stuff.
Conor
like
apparently stole all of his ticket money for a show. So Conor, there's a story about that Conor basically, if you're good, like at the beginning, that's how you make money, is ticket money from a show, right? People will go like, okay, so let's say it's £30 for a ticket. They'll be like, right, well, if you sell that ticket for 30, you can keep a tenner. You know what I mean? So, okay, you might have 400 or 500 quid like sat there in front of you. Okay, you maybe owe 400 of it. Let's just say. You know? Well, so I think like in the story, there's about €800 or so. I think it's available on YouTube. The Rise of Conor McGregor, and Conor dipped into it. And then dipped into it again, apparently. And he was like, before I knew it, like, it was mostly all gone. And he was just like, fuck it. Like, I'll just bounce. Like, I'm not going back. And then John basically went round to his house, and spoke to his mum. And if you read John Kavanagh's book, is the reason he had a soft spot is because Conor's mum's called Margaret. And so is his mum's called Margaret too. And he was like, oh, she said her name was Margaret. And I think he was a little bit disarmed by that when she was like, my name's Margaret. And like, oh, what's he done? Type of thing, like, what's he done now? Yeah. So I think he was a bit disarmed, and he was like, listen, like, I think you'll be, wasting a huge amount of ability if you don't come back to the gym. I'm willing to write off that debt. Now that's a story where that's paid off.
Immensely.
That's paid off for sure.
He's coming back with like a boat full of whiskey and everything.
Well, even if you were to say, I think it's a lot more than 1% fee of like coaching. Even if you were to take 5% of Conor's purse, you're going to change your life. Got a book deal out of him. Conor. John's like a great coach in his own right, you know what I mean? But there's no way you can turn around and sit there and be like, that having gym would be, that gym like exploded. And martial arts in Ireland exploded because of Conor. Huge. The combat sports scene in Ireland is massive. The kids that are playing football here or whatever, we haven't had it. We definitely haven't had it. But there's explosions all over. You just need to take one person from a country. Thinking like Korea, like the majority of the kids play golf because of this female golf champion. She won, and apparently that caused like a massive explosion in golf. In Ireland, it's combat sports. Like, their gyms are packed. They've got tons of people coming out of Ireland who are going to be top athletes, like Paul Hughes and stuff like that. I watched him win his title fight.
Just had a crazy fight with
Morgan Charrier. I was watching that live, and it was awesome.
Oh yeah, because Aiden was meant to be fighting on that card.
Aiden was meant to be fighting. His opponent pulled with COVID, and we just went down. Aiden needed to make the weight anyway, so he did. And we went down, and they were like, okay, well, tickets for the show and stuff like that. Atmosphere was unreal. It's so good. If you want to watch a great atmosphere and a great fight, and you talk about that belief, like Paul has that in abundance, he's going to be good, and Morgan Charrier have that, you know what I mean? Like, imagine that, people screaming. Most people are going to hide in their shells. These guys were like out and being let's go. And I love just gameness.
Because they'd set it up quite appropriately with all the French on one side and the Irish on the
I
other.
was in the,
back and forth.
well, I didn't plan this, but I just ended up, the French surrounded us. The French surrounded us and were hanging off the banisters and stuff. So, you know, it was cool. It was definitely one of the best atmospheres I've experienced live. I've been to like Celtic Park with 60,000 people, but that's still an atmosphere there that I would say lives up to that. Yeah. You know, watching fights live, especially a fight like that, is special.
Yes.
Mentioning Celtic.
Yeah,
mention Celtic.
I know you're a Celtic fan, Kev. Do you want to speak about current situation? Do you still keep up to date?
Not really. To be honest, it's probably better people. Like, I'd be wasted talking about football, to be honest. I can pretend. I can do a really good pretend and just say football cliches, really, and then just just get away with it.
Show speaking about Arsenal.
Yeah. Norwich are never going to win the league.
Yeah, pretty much. You know what I mean? You'd be like, oh, you can kind of get, if you've been around it for long enough, you can kind of get by with being, you know, like giving out your cliches.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, then I'll go on to a bit of kids coaching. You want to speak about? I know you and Martin and Aidan are actively involved.
Yeah, coach the kids. Yeah, coach the kids classes. There was nothing like that when I started. I wish I could have started doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu when I was younger, right? Because if you think about it, I loved scrapping when I was younger. It was harmless, right? Because there was, you know, like you would just scrap with someone and it was good fun. You know what I mean? And there's no way, like when you're young, like you can really do any real damage, I don't think, you know. When adults like fighting, usually is like potentially dangerous, you know what I mean? It's probably going to be in a wrong environment. Kids scrap, it's going to be in the park, right? But I wish I'd done that, because essentially, right, and you can talk about any fighting, fighting and like self-defense and things like that. If two people are going to fight in the street, right, more than likely, or in the park or whatever, more than likely these people are going to stumble into a clinch, right? What happens in any boxing match? A referee has to break them up all the time. If there was no referee, those two people would essentially wrestle. Okay. Mm-hmm. So a brilliant thing to teach your kid is how to be confident grappling with others and wrestling. And that's essentially what we teach, right? We teach kids to wrestle each other. Okay. Now it's funny because wrestling is such a good sport to teach children. Like wrestling, like the traditional art of how to put somebody on their ass. Okay. Like, couldn't think of a better thing to arm a child with. Yeah, you're not going to get intimidated kids. If your kid can put another kid on his ass, yeah, like that's just going to serve him so well. Yeah. Okay. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you can hold the positions, you can put on arm bars. You don't need to do that at like age 8 or 9. You put someone on their ass, you're going to end most arguments and altercations right there. And even if people are going to be throwing punches and stuff like that, you know, a kid who can
punches from your back.
You know, you can't. And a kid who can wrestle, you know, they're going to be like king in the playground. Yeah. You know, and usually they're not going to be a bully. I would argue that they wouldn't be a bully. You know, I tend to think that bullies tend to be like weak people themselves. You know, they're probably a victim of bullying themselves. Like, and don't hold anything against any of the people who like ever were mean or bullied me. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, like they were just like weak. That was just weakness coming out of people. If you know what I mean, they chose to pick on someone. That's just like that was just weakness. The way they kind of expressed their insecurity was to try and take it out on someone else. Like real strength is like building people up, right? So their expression of what they thought was strength was to like put someone down, you know? So like, I would think that when you see kids who like go to the gym, put in that discipline, and learn that art, like they're going to learn like what real strength is, like helping other kids. I was really proud of the kids and some of their attitudes. Like it's amazing to watch some of the kids and what they can do and their attitudes towards each other, right? They're still kids. Some of them still have like their tears and stuff like that. But, you know, the kids like are really inspiring, you know what I mean? Some little kids, and you can see the ones that need it, and you can see the ones that are like doing really well, and you can just tell some of these kids from their attitude so young that they're going to do well at whatever they want to do in life. You know what I mean?
It'll only be a good thing, right? Just because from 10 years from now, they are going to be like the prime generation, right? So having all these teachings on humbleness, whether or not they decide to compete or whatever later down the line, is going to like stop all this kind of BS that you see with street fights and that on the streets and stuff like that.
I would genuinely hope so. I think a lot of these kids will definitely, like I said, with me, I know I don't need to prove myself, right? I know I don't need to prove myself. I would rather prove myself competing. I think some of these kids will know that. I think the reason kids look for fights is because they don't know what it's like. Yeah. They're like, I want to find out. You know, I'm going to go to the park. I'm going to start a fight with that kid. These kids are doing it every week, you know, and they're going to know. And one of the things I think is really cool, and something I maybe wanted to talk about, was people say, want my kid to get discipline. And what they really want is for their kid to do what they're told. Yeah. Right? So they're like, I want my kid to do what they're told. I want you to shout at them and line them up on the wall. And that's not real discipline, right? That's just having a kid that does what they're told when they're shouted at. Teaching a kid real discipline is teaching them, you come to class, maybe when you're tired, maybe when you don't feel like it, maybe when it's the holidays and you've been playing your Xbox for 7 hours straight and you just want an extra hour on it. Teaching them discipline is teaching them to go and do the hard thing when, you know, maybe, you know, they would be forgiven for not doing it.
It's an independent school, right?
Yeah, for sure. So that's, to me, that's giving your kid discipline, is showing them you have worked hard over time and built up knowledge and experience and you've been rewarded for it, right? A lot of people will say like, oh, Kev, like, well, they might say it, they might not, but a lot of people maybe go, oh, it's just, you're lucky because you win, but you know, you've probably got natural strength or natural physicality. And it's like, well, I didn't. I turned up. Even when people would have been like, oh, you know, it's a cold day, it's freezing outside, it's raining, don't want to train. When there's no one else training, when there was only one or two people on the mat, like, kept going. That's like discipline, you know. You give that to the kids when you say like, yes, you come to training when you don't want to, when you're tired, when you've had a hard day at school, a hard day at work, whatever. You give those children discipline, and you try to show them back when you turn up for those classes, you know, as well, and you show them, yeah, I'm going to be here. I'll be here next week as well. You know, you show those kids that discipline, and hopefully that kind of pays off later down the line as adults. And like the biggest reward is kind of when you see the kids enjoying it and doing the things you've taught them, and you're like, wow, you're doing really good. And just seeing some kids already, you know, starting to turn their lives around. Kids who like would have temper tantrums and scream and cry and stuff like that at not winning a game. You know what I mean? Like, and some people will be like, oh yeah, that's just him. You know, can't change him. And it's like, yes, you can. You know, you can teach them to lose early. Like, learning to lose early properly is a big thing, right?
Learning to lose is probably the key on how to learn to win, right?
Yeah, for sure. So these kids learn to lose, learn to suck it up a bit, and then learn how to win. And that's what I'm saying when I go back to, I had an unhealthy attitude towards failure. Like, when I done my first Taekwondo couple of belts, I just winged it. I never actually learned the patterns or anything like that you had to learn. And I failed, and I quit Taekwondo because I just quit because I had an unhealthy attitude towards failure. But we didn't do an awful lot of sparring and things like that. We should have, you know, and we should have, you know, it's just something we do with the kids. We hold one person's hand up, okay, and some of them don't like it, but it's important. You lost. Oh well, you get another shot next week. You get another shot in 5 minutes. You know, I think that's such an important thing to give the kids, like a healthy attitude towards failing, towards messing it up, and we try and tell them that all the time. You know, like it's okay, you messed it up. So did I the first time I done it. So like I think teaching the kids class as well has been like a massive thing for me, because it's frustrating, right? Because adults are not the same as kids. But adults, when they go there, you know, they're paying you money to be there. They don't want to be, you know, they just want to learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So you try your best. Like with kids, like, you know, their mum or dad or whatever is taking them there, and you have to kind of like, you know, maybe step down your expectations of them a little bit, but you totally have to find a different way for some of the kids. You need to realize like what each child needs, essentially. And that's something I learned in that Hicks and Gracie book. Like a good coach can show everyone a really good armbar, right? But a great coach can give someone what they need. So Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is, like for a lot of people, it reflects their personality, right? So you'll hear a saying, your game reflects your personality. The way you approach Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu reflects your personality.
Mm-hmm.
I can truly see that in the kids, right? The kids' personalities, so you can totally see that. But as a coach, trying to give that kid what they need is something else too. Some kids need confidence. Some kids need to be calmed down. Some kids need, be a bit more aggressive. Like, you can win this match, and that's like a really special thing to be able to kind of give some children that. Hopefully you give them the right thing. Yeah. Hopefully you give some of those kids like the right thing. And now at the end of the day, like, what would the dropout rate for martial arts be? Not every one of those is going to stay on, but if you have a positive effect on them, like, what's that?
Yeah.
That's got to be worth something, right?
100%.
Yeah.
See, when it comes to like coaching and that, maybe moving up the age bracket a bit, Lee's competed a few times. I just wanted to talk to you about, you're obviously kind of overseeing this sometimes. Mm-hmm. Is there more anxiety for you when someone you're coaching, or even when you're like in the corner for Aiden or someone like that? Is there more anxiety with that because there's less control because you're not in control of the fight?
Yeah, you're not in control.
And even though you're involved heavily with the training and and believe in these guys' abilities and that, there's, I guess, that kind of a third-party anxiety of putting people in harm's way.
Yeah, for sure. You do learn sometimes to remove yourself. You have to remove yourself, right? You want someone to do well. When all's said and done, people look back and say, Kev helped as much as what Kev could. He was there, went to the match, done as much as he could to coach and stuff. And coaching's a skill in itself, right? Not every person who's a good athlete can be a good coach. But yeah, there is a lot of anxiety. God, man, like
I've only done it the once, and the difference between training in the gym and competing for me was just, I think it was too much for me. That's possibly why I haven't went back to it.
Some people, and that's okay, and it reflects their personality. There's a lot of people, even if you do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, something like, only like 10% of people maybe compete. And then the ones that do stay, they might only do it once. It's not for everyone. It's a high stress, high pressure kind of situation. A lot of people just don't like it. For me, I didn't like it either. I lost my first couple of matches, and then eventually I won, and it felt great. And I was like, "Oh yes, I'm gonna keep doing this." But I mean, for me, it just gave me really something to channel and constantly build on. But yeah, competing, I've cornered people and they've lost, and it's hurt me for a long time, like not being able to sleep, like genuinely like devastated. I'm not being able to sleep like afterwards. Now at the end of the day, see, when you're competing, really, unless you get to a certain level, of course, right? When you're competing, the only person that cares if you won is you, right? Realistically, right? Realistically, on that white belt tournament, you care. The referee, the staff, and things like that, they go home at the end of the day. You care, and it means everything to you, and that's fine, right? And so only once you start to get a lot more up the ladder, then there's maybe more money involved, and people care if you win or lose. The coaches are like, damn, like if you won, you could have done this and you could have done that, but you can't control that. You have to just, eventually, that's part of my kind of stoic mentality. You have to kind of control what you can control and relax on what you can't, but yeah, for sure, I've definitely been pretty anxious coaching people and things like that, but that's kind of the special part of the whole experience, if you know what I mean. Like, being so pent up for someone to win and stuff, about being like, wow, like, let's do that again. You know what I mean? Okay, well, you win, you lose, because somebody has to lose, right? Like, you go out and it's you know, two guys competing, and it's rarely a draw, and you go out and you hope that your guy wins. You do everything in your power to coach that person to a win, because that's what it comes down to, really, right? At like a certain level is winning, right? Like taking part and all that and performing and doing well. But at a certain level, yes, it's about winning. Okay, you do your best. But when we look back, we'll give anything for those moments again. Yeah. You know what I mean? Being like so involved in the corner, like some of those moments afterwards, and then being like so high together as a team when you win, that's amazing. You know, like there's no feeling like it I feel happier sometimes for people when they win than when I win, you know? So there is that element to it as well, you know?
See, what do you think of like the Scottish kind of combat sports scene in general right now? I mean, I'm absolutely devastated for Chris Duncan was on the contender series.
Can we pause for 1 minute?
Yeah.
The Scottish MMA guys through Jiu-Jitsu tournaments and things. Is any guys you've noticed are kind of up and coming? We obviously know about like Stevie Ray and
Stevie Ray is an absolute hero, right? Watched him fight at the Alhambra, and it was like one of the best fights I've ever seen. No, not the Alhambra, Stirling Central Halls, Stevie Ray versus Scott Ward. So I've always been a massive Stevie Ray fan. Hopefully I'm going to be captaining Team Scotland for a teams grappling event, and Stevie will be in my team, so that'll be awesome. That'll be awesome, because Stevie's like I would say Scottish martial arts legend straight away.
Did he not beat Pimlet in like a grappling competition?
Yeah, he beat Pimlet on Polaris. So I mean, in terms of up and coming Scottish MMA guys, like we were talking about Chris Duncan. Chris Duncan will come good.
Yeah.
Like you can obviously see he's had a setback with not getting the contract. Made weight like what, three times or something.
Like 2 weeks or something.
3 times in 2 weeks, like. You know what I mean? Like, but he'll come good. Like, it's one of the toughest guys. Everyone says that.
High level striker. He was
He's
an animal. Like.
So, I mean, like, lucky I'm friends with Ross Houston as well. I train with Ross. Like, Ross is a nice guy. All these guys are cool. I'm really happy. Even like getting to train with guys like Paul McVeigh and stuff like that, who's like, you know, he was Cage Warriors bantamweight champ, but also like he was a really cool guy as well. I've trained with him like a good few times as well.
Quite a lot with Aiden as well.
Yeah, trained with Aiden, obviously as well. Me and Aiden went to school together, still train, and yeah, Aiden's a good guy as well.
Do you find it kind of surreal seeing kind of the stages you guys are at now compared to?
Definitely. Like, I remember me and Aiden being in an exam together, and we were not allowed to sit higher PE. We had to sit into.
Okay.
And it's kind of funny. Like me and Aiden are like, I'm maybe coaching Aiden, or cornering Aiden when he's fighting on UFC Fight Pass. You know what I mean? We were like the two guys in this like exam. Like, the teacher was like, "You two lack the ability and the maturity to sit higher, so you're going down to like into, and I'm not letting you sit that." You know what I mean? And
you
like,
ever felt tempted to go back and make a big custard pie and just smack her in the face?
Honestly, like my PE, right? See, my PE teacher. This is terrible, right? But this is why. See, when you're coaching the kids, even if they're like not very good, you must encourage at all times. You know, my PE teacher done this thing, right, where she was like, you have to score everybody in the class at basketball. Okay, so if everybody thinks, right, so in here, right, we're all going to rate each other, and if everyone in the class puts a 1 next to your name, Lee, you get ranked number 1. So everybody, she made me do this, right, but she used to pick on me all the time, and she was like, Kevin, foul, Kevin, you're doing this wrong. So I got rated like the worst in the class at basketball, like worse than everyone, like, and you know, PE teacher was also like, yeah, you lack the ability to do higher PE, you lack the maturity, you know, you just can't sit higher PE, right? And I'm like, ha ha ha. You know, not only that, is like I've coached people at a professional level. When I say coached, cornered, you know, also got to compete at decent levels and stuff like that. And basically sports and coaching children is my life and my living as well, you know, and doing sports therapy with people is my living too, you know. And if I'd believed what that person said, of course we hang on to some of the little negative things people say and we use it to push us. But that's true. That's my PE teacher said I lacked the maturity and the ability to even sit higher PE. You know what I mean? Like, looking back at that, I'm like, yeah,
big smile on your face,
big slice of humble pie for you. You know,
going past the limit with the bell.
yeah. Of course, no, but like, people shouldn't be speaking to children like that, right?
one of the ones you and Martin can kind of be proud of is Shay as well, considering where he's came from.
Shay can be proud of himself too, you know. Shay's funny. Who would have thought a world champion would have ever come from Findhorn, right?
Yeah.
You know, but that's a cool thing.
Plaque somewhere and put up on this wall.
Who would have ever thought a world champion in the sport of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu could come from Findhorn? But there you go. Yeah, Shay came to us, and like, you know, you're going to see people who in the sport of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, much like I said about chess champions, they study like crazy. Shay is someone who just has an encyclopedic knowledge of Jiu-Jitsu, watches matches on repeat, you know, and just is going to do well. So luckily trained with, like, the last time I trained with Shay was during a lockdown. Shay turned his living room into a gym, borrowed mats, and it's in Bath Street in Glasgow, you know what I mean? So like in a front room in this high ceiling building, I got together with Ellis and a couple other guys, Cammy Donnelly and stuff like that from Glasgow, and we were training in Shay's front room. and like, I remember this story of like, I remember his flatmate was moving in, right? And this girl was like moving her stuff in, and there was like 6 guys rolling in a front room, and there was like steam coming up the windows, steam coming out, and this girl's mum came through and was like, "Oh, hello." And I mean, like, this guy's like got my back trying to strangle me type thing. And this is just during a period of like, you know, do not go into a shop without a mask. Stay 2 meters apart at all times. Some people at this point, this isn't like August, some people at this point, you know what I mean, would have had a meltdown if somebody touched them in the supermarket, you know what I mean? And we're like rolling around the floor and and this girl's mum's like, "Oh, hiya," like, you know, like Sarah's just moving her stuff, and all right, cool. So yeah, like, that's one of the last times I was training with Shay. Was someone was trying to move in their stuff at uni, and he was running a gym from the front room.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but this is during a time when people were not used to humans making contact with each other. That was frowned upon.
Yeah, especially when they've got like each other's backs and that.
Yeah, especially we're literally dripping sweat in each other's mouths.
So do you want to go?
Yeah.
Quick fire stuff. So
sure.
Go one each, or do you want the readers out first?
You go first, mate.
Right. Okay, so I'll give a bit of context to this. I'm going to ask your favourite fighter, but it can be from any martial art discipline that you want it to be. Just the first one that comes to the top of your head.
George St. Pierre.
Okay, I've got gi or no gi.
No gi.
What's the best fight you've ever seen?
Stevie Ray versus Scott Ward in the Sterling Halls.
What's your favourite submission?
Armbar.
When will Scotland have a major MMA promotion champion?
In 10 years. Within the next 10 years.
Okay, you can only have one or the other. IBJJF title or black belt? A world title.
So I can only have one.
Yeah.
Black belt.
A follow-up to my last question. Who will be the person to do it?
Unsure. I think Chris Duncan's got a good shot. I think he has got a good shot for sure. You know, people are coming out of the woodwork now and doing things quick. Building on, if you look back how long it used to take people to get good, now people are coming along and getting good very, very quickly, and they're building off the back of what people have done before. So I do believe Scotland has got a good potential to have a major, even like Ross Houston could totally win the Bellator welterweight title for sure. Yeah. So I'm saying within 10 years, but I'm forgetting like, like stranger things have happened. You know what I mean? Like the right fights, the right times, things like that. That's all part of it.
So I've got kind of two answers I need from this. So your biggest influence in Jiu-Jitsu, I want one in Scotland and then kind of one on the world stage.
Biggest influence in Jiu-Jitsu? Difficult to say. Immediately, the people who have had massive influences on me was meeting like the likes of like the SBG coaches like Carl Tanswell and stuff like that, and then also actually meeting one of my best friend Martin, and he's my coach as well. You know what I mean? We've spent a lot of time together. He's put a lot of time into me, and if it wasn't for Martin doing jiu-jitsu, I maybe probably wouldn't have stuck around at it. Very good. And just remember, in terms of influence on my actual game, you know what I mean? Like me and Martin trained together twice a day for, it feels like the best part of a year. I made huge progress during that. So I would have to say like probably Martin's had a huge influence on like me as a person and my game as well, and he's the head coach at the gym, and you've got to give him thanks because, without him, like he was the one that turned up and was like, Kev, we could have a gym in here. You know what I mean? Like we could put a gym here. So, without you'll remember you painting and stuff like that. Like,
well, when I started,
he did make a big mistake when he decided it was grey and black. I'm going to say that.
And we used to have to haul out the mats.
Yeah, we used to have to haul out the mats. One by one. Kids these days, they don't know what it's like. They come out and they train on the Gucci mats. Didn't know what it was like to have stained mats and stuff like that. Crap.
The most satisfying win of your career?
Difficult one to say. I would definitely say, like, nothing against the person who I won it against. I won the SGI grappling belt, and I genuinely didn't think I could. Mm-hmm. And that was satisfying because first I won the 4-band tournament, and then that was a moment of reckoning for me. I was like, oh my God, I did it. But then they made me defend it against someone called Tristam, and he submitted me with a Darce, and he done it a tricky way. He let me pass his guard and done like an escape straight into a Darce. And then I was going around the venue that day and people were like, I've got you to win. I was like, do you? Because I don't. I was like, that's nice. I genuinely, like, first 5 minutes into that match, he put me in a footlock. And then I literally just hit this switch and was like, nah, bro. Not today. Not today. It's going to be, and I choked him out, and that was satisfying, man. Because I literally, you can watch that on YouTube, like literally, like stood up and was like, yes, and let out this big massive whoop, and I was just like, woo, and like it's honestly one of my most favorite photos. I've just got the biggest smile on my face, and the guy's putting the belt on, and it's like, you said like the belt. Like that, just a symbol, but that photo just wouldn't look as cool if it wasn't a guy putting a belt around. But I was really, really proud of that moment, and because it was about he'd submitted me before. And there's only a handful of people that do it, but in competition, get my ass tapped every week on the regular, every session. That's okay. Failure, it's part of it. But yeah, that one, like for sure, like that feeling was good for sure,
So I've got, if you could give us one name or somebody that you've not fought yet that you maybe want to have a match against.
Unsure. I'm unsure. Definitely, I'm really looking forward to this one against Shane Curtis because I believe I can beat him. He's been on Polaris and stuff like that. I'm confident I will be on that show too. Just going to put it out there. I'm confident. A few years ago, didn't think I would be able to get to Grapple Fest. Got to Grapple Fest. Got a win on that show. Got a match against Shane Curtis on Grapple Fest. I'll beat him and I'll get on to Polaris and I'll get my win there too. And then that's the kind of area that I want to I want to be. I think I can do it. I genuinely think I can do it. So in terms of name of opponent, like, I'm not going to give you that, but I know what level I will be competing at. That's a different thing, yeah.
Is that more your style, kind of like submission only compared to?
I think that's going to be
tournaments and things.
I enjoy both, but I think it's going to be that's going to be, and it's just that's what it is, you know. And I do enjoy. I'll still do both, and I'll do jiu-jitsu as well to the day that I can, the day I physically can't.
Best advice you've ever received?
Tough one, but for sure, some of the things I would say is, if not now, when?
Yeah.
Like, and make the worst thing that ever happened to you the best thing that ever happened to you. Some of the worst things that could have happened to me happened right as I was about to open my business. Personal things, right? And I could have genuinely used them as an excuse to say, no, like, I'm not ready. Now's not the time. And I just realized, like, if I don't go now, like, I'm never going to go. I'll never find a time. So the worst thing that ever happens can be the best thing that ever happens to you. And also, like, you'll never be ready there'll never be the perfect time. So if not now, when? If you don't think you can beat people, when are you going to beat people? What will it take for you to believe, you know? And if you don't, one of the most important things is believing in yourself, right? It does take a little while. So if you can believe in someone else who needs that confidence, you should give people that belief in themselves, you know, because that's what people need. And you'd be surprised. Some people have believed in me, and I'm so grateful for it. You know, people believing in me and telling me I can do things and stuff, and I genuinely haven't believed in myself. You know what I mean? Like, people saying, I've got you to win, and I'm like, I don't. But, you know, just, believing in other people. If you can do that, if you can give someone the confidence and believe in them, you know, that can pay massive dividends for people.
Powerful stuff, mate.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for taking time. I know you're a really busy dude. I appreciate that.
I enjoyed it.
Gave us a few hours, the little thing that we've got going on here. I think what you're doing for the area with the coaching and that is a great thing.
Thanks.
Like we were talking about earlier. I wish you all the best in the future.
Appreciate that.
And we didn't really touch on the Misfits kind of angle today, but Lee was thinking, I'm planning on traveling with us next year, so maybe setting something up in the gym eventually, or
get the guys from the gym together and stuff. Be really cool. I mean, the guys from the gym who competed, putting like Aiden, you know, but even like early stuff, Aiden, Ewan, and stuff like that. We've trained for fights outside in the grass. I'll tell this one quick story before I go. Right, okay. Me and Aiden and Ginge were training, and Martin was holding pads one day, and me, Ginge, and Aiden had fights lined up. And Martin goes to me one day, he's like, right, Kev, get that top off, get your six pack out, and get some vitamin D on your skin. And we were training up in New Elgin, up in near Pinefield. So we're out, took my top off, hitting pads, and a Jack Russell came along and pished on it. That was literally, you know, people don't think that they have to, you know, think they have to put up with hard things, but that's what I used to put up with when I was training outside. Dog coming along and peeing on my stuff. You don't get that now when inside, when all these kids that have seen the UFC and things like that get into training gyms. You didn't have to put up with dogs peeing on your stuff while you were trying to train.
What an appropriate note to end it on.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Like,
Lee, thank you very much for joining me. I know you've kind of struggled because it's the North Pole corner today, so I might have all the sophisticated stuff, but I don't have a heater in here yet. So I'll work on it. So, this podcast is also available on Google Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, and Spotify.